charges of treason, and a crackdown on the opposition as the political crisis in Kenya deepens. Today we begin our three-part special report, Cape Town in the crossfire, an inside look at the city's criminal underworld, and how African style could help unite the Commonwealth. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Tonight, there is a new twist in the Kenyan government's action against the opposition. A politician was charged with treason on Tuesday over the symbolic presidential swearing-in of opposition leader Raila Odinga, reigniting street protests in which one person was killed. A campaigning lawyer, Miguna, was arrested last Friday in a dawn raid on his house. On Tuesday, he was charged with being present and consenting to the administration of an oath to commit a capital offense, namely treason. That's according to the charge sheet. Demonstrators took to the streets in the west, the heartland of the support for Odinga, who maintains he was the winner of an election that returned President Uhuru Kenyatta to power last year. Also on Tuesday, the government suspended the passport of David Ndii, an opposition strategist. As according to a letter he posted on Twitter, a government official has confirmed the letter's authenticity. Now for the latest developments in Kenya, VOA correspondent Daniel Sheriff joins me live via Skype from Nairobi. Good evening, Daniel.
Good evening.
Yeah, so first, what is the implication of the treason charge against Mr. Miguna?
Well, it certainly sounds bad, at least on paper. It is a capital offense, as they mentioned in the charge sheet. And, you know, I mean, technically, it could be something that could lead to an execution. I mean, if they were to actually carry it out. But of course, the High Court here in Nairobi actually ordered that Miguna be released. And his arrest, of course, was something that was extremely controversial in the way that it was carried out and the way that he was held by the police up until today. So it's whether or not, you know, anything is actually going to come from the charges is going to be very interesting to watch and see. What we have here is a standoff between the government-backed and the police on one side and the courts on the other side here in Nairobi. So it will be very fascinating to see where they go with this treason charge. It should be noted, of course, that the man who actually took the so-called oath of office, or the swearing in, as the opposition has called it, Raila Odinga, has not been charged. He has not been arrested. And of course, the Attorney General here in Kenya very famously in December said that if he did go ahead with that swearing-in ceremony, which he did, that he would be potentially charged with treason. That so far has not happened.
We'll wait and see. Now, there are concerns that the government was also seeking to arrest other opposition figures, but they were granted anticipatory bail. What does that exactly mean?
Yeah, this was quite fascinating as well. So essentially, they were expecting to be arrested, and so the High Court allowed them to be bailed out in advance, anticipating that they would be facing more serious charges that would keep them in captivity. So essentially banning them from being arrested, banning the police from arresting them. And so there were about a dozen of the opposition figures who were granted this anticipatory bail. But some of those, at least three we're hearing now in the local press reports now, have had their passports suspended.
Indeed, very, very unprecedented developments in Kenya. We'll keep watching. Daniel, thank you very much for joining us today. Well, that's Daniel Sheriff, who is reporting live via Skype from Nairobi. Now, pressure is mounting on South African President Jacob Zuma. The Speaker of Parliament, Baleka Mbete, said on Tuesday that the President's State of the Nation address, which had been scheduled for Thursday, is being postponed following a request from South African opposition parties. Zuma, whose presidency has been riddled by graft scandals and economic decline, has been in a weakened position since he was replaced as leader of the African National Congress by Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa in December. The The ANC has called a special meeting of its decision-making National Executive Committee for Wednesday in Cape Town, at which analysts say some members of the party would call for Zuma to resign. Zuma has faced growing pressure to step down as head of state since he was replaced as leader of the ANC. Now, for more on South Africa's politics, viewers Anita Powell joins me by phone from Cape Town. Good evening, Anita.
Hi, Vincent.
Yes, now so much pressure on Mr. Zuma. First, just tell us a little more about this postponement. Is this something that has ever happened before?
No, this is maybe in the words of Donald Trump, unprecedented for a president of South Africa to have his State of the Nation address taken away less than 48 hours before he was supposed to give it.
And does this indicate that within the party there is a possibility that Mr. Zuma is no longer their favorite and is probably on the way out?
Oh, I think that's crystal clear. Many members of the top six in the ANC have been, for the last 48 hours, trying to pressure him privately to tender his resignation, and he has held firm. So this is a sign, I think, that his fortunes might be finally at an end. And a lot of analysts here are predicting that he's going to throw in the towel in the next 24 to 48 hours. But who knows, with Jacob Zuma, he's held on this long, he might just try to hold on a bit longer.
He's a man who has survived many times, but what is different this time? I mean, what makes this a little bit more different than in the past?
What is different than the 9 other no-confidence votes that Jacob Zuma has faced in Parliament is that this time it is his own party that is openly turning on him. Many prominent members of the African National Congress say that they think it would be best if he were to resign, and that indicates that this is not really a government issue. This is a party issue. This is the ANC sorting itself out. And Jacob Zuma, like many stalwarts in the ANC, has long said, wherever the ANC sends me, I will go. Of course, that doesn't seemingly apply when they tell him to go. But the ANC is a very strong organization, and they seem to be telling him it's time.
But now talking about whenever the ANC sends him, but this time around, if he's, for instance, voted out of office, he also faces possible charges of corruption and abuse of power, right? And this is a little more serious than just being out of the presidency.
Yes, Zuma is the focus of numerous investigations, including one that's hanging over his head like the sword of Damocles right now, and that is 783 counts of corruption for a deal done in the late 1990s, the arms deal in South Africa. That could be reinstated in coming days by the National Prosecuting Authority, and that is going to be a very serious affair indeed.
Indeed, and of course his position of influence will definitely win. Anita, thank you very much for your reporting. Viewers, Anita Powell reporting from Cape Town in South Africa. Now, staying right there, Cape Town, South Africa is one of the most popular tourist destinations on the continent. But there's something you won't see advertised in the glossy brochures: violent organized crime. In the first of a 3-part series, we go inside the city's gang-infested neighborhoods. Here to tell us more is Africa 54's Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick.
Thank you very much, Vincent. It's called the Cape of Good Hope, but it's also known as the Cape of Storms. That is because Cape Town has a dark side, a criminal underworld. And I'm going to take you to a place called the Cape Flats, a government housing scheme built during the apartheid era to house people of color. Now, I grew up in these parts, and I traveled back there recently to bring you the stories of communities under siege. We would like to warn you that some of the visuals you are about to see are disturbing.
It is absolutely crazy out here. It's a war zone.
This is one of the most dangerous places in the world, where life can change in minutes. It's Human Rights Day in South Africa, a national holiday. But on the Cape Flats, there is nothing to celebrate. Another child is dead. Zinedine Pelton was on his way home from school when he got caught in gang crossfire. He was 14 years old. His grandmother, standing at the spot where the boy was shot, said she heard the gunfire but never imagined her grandson would be caught in it.
I just heard the gunshots, and I heard somebody shout, "It's Zinedine." A group of us rushed over here. He was lying face down with his backpack still on his back. We picked him up and rushed him to the hospital. But even as he lay here, I could see he was already gone.
It's become a morbid routine here. Gun battles between rival gangs breaking out near schools and homes. The victims are almost always children, struck by stray bullets. Families and neighbors gathering to pick up the pieces, and in many cases, the bodies. They build memorials, hold funerals, and pray it won't happen again until it does. Ridwan Jacobs has lived on the Cape Flats his entire life. He says the violence here is now worse than ever. Jacobs is a journalist. He's been documenting the deaths on social media.
We'll just be standing around, having a conversation with a friend. These kids are playing, kicking ball, and the next minute, bang, bang, bang. Life is cheap on the Cape Flats. It is extremely short.
Cape Town's violent street culture is fueled by a lack of employment, opportunities, and optimism. These are the last vestiges of apartheid, poverty, and broken homes. Gangs offer young people a sense of belonging and control. Children as young as 9 are recruited to a life of violent crime, a deadly drug trade, and tit-for-tat gun battles. South Africa regularly makes the list of the most violent countries on earth. Cape Town is its murder capital, with one of the highest homicide rates in the world. City authorities estimate there are about 130 gangs operating in the Western Cape province alone. At the mayor's office in the city of Cape Town, officials say the violence exacts a high cost, not only in terms of lives lost, but people's economic prospects.
We're tired of seeing those suburbs feature year after year in the top 10 list. It makes for intolerable living there. It means you can't run any other meaningful programs. You can't keep housing offices open. You can't keep clinics open. Everything is under stress. You can't run proper sports programs. You can't get public sector investment. You can't get job investment. You can't create jobs, because the bullets keep on flying.
Jacobs believes the only solution is to bring in the army to protect the people of the Cape Flats from what he calls the war happening on their doorsteps.
And tomorrow, in part 2, we'll take a closer look at the victims of gun violence on the Cape Flats, and we'll bring you the story of one unlikely survivor who is beating the odds. Vincent?
Thank you, Haiti. Now, Zimbabwe's main opposition leader, Morgan Tsvangirai, remains critically ill in South African hospital. This according to a source from his party with knowledge of his condition. The unnamed source says his supporters should brace for the worst. But Tsvangirai's spokesman, Luke Tomborinyoka, says the movement for democratic change leader is stable, but the nation should keep on praying. Tsvangirai's Twitter feed says the former union leader, who emerged 2 decades ago as Mugabe's principal political challenger, was shocked to read of his deteriorating condition. The 65-year-old has been in and out of the hospital since disclosing in June 2016 that he had colon cancer. He returned to Johannesburg in neighboring South Africa for his latest round of treatment in early January. Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered during the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Now, coming up, female genital mutilation continues as change comes slowly. Stay with us.
This is a country that I chose to become a citizen. I didn't have to become a citizen. I chose to become a citizen.
I feel like America gave me an opportunity to pursue my passion as an artist.
I really believe that clean eating is a way to a more successful life, or a happier life, if you want to put it that way.
One of the things that helps me wake up every morning is doing better, being better.
We grew up poor, and so I'm always focused on helping the working class be able to have a more comfortable lifestyle.
I'm passionate about doing justice every day. I oftentimes say that justice is a verb, not a noun. You know, I believe in action and moving the ball forward.
It's time for our health report today, and today we will talk about female genital mutilation, which is a day to observe today internationally. Liberia has imposed a one-year ban on female genital mutilation, a highly contentious issue in the West African country. The ban came into force after former leader Ellen Johnson Sirleaf signed an executive order before stepping down. It makes it an offense to perform FGM on anyone under 18, but it can still be carried out on adults with their consent. Some observers say about half of the women in Liberia have undergone the procedure. The practice involves the partial or total removal of the external genitalia. Health experts say it often causes health problems and can be fatal. For supporters of FGM, the ritual is a key rite of passage, among other things. Activists in Liberia have applauded the executive order. Others say the ban may not be enforceable and have urged a new President George Weah to push for a permanent law. And as I mentioned earlier, February 6th marks the International Day of Zero Tolerance for Female Genital Mutilation. The United Nations say FGM, or female genital cutting, comprises all procedures that involve altering or harming the female genitalia for non-medical reasons. FGM causes severe bleeding and health issues, including cysts, infertility, as well as complications in childbirth. It is recognized internationally as a violation of the human rights of women and girls. And according to the United Nations, worldwide, at least 200 million women and girls alive today have undergone some form of FGM. It is known to be prevalent in nearly 30 African countries and in Yemen, Iraqi Kurdistan, and Indonesia. It has been banned in most African countries affected by the practice, but enforcement of the law is usually weak. FGM is mostly carried out on young girls between infancy and age 15. Now joining us live via Skype from Alicante, Spain, is best-selling and award-winning author Lucinda E. Clark, author of the suspenseful literary fiction Amy Cat for Life. Ms. Clark, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So today is the day to commemorate, well, to really advocate against the practice of FGM. How significant is this day to your work as an advocate?
Very, very important, because I wasn't aware of it myself for a long time, even though I've lived in Africa for over 30 years. And when I started writing my books after retirement, I set them all in Africa. They tell you to write what you know. And I learned from feedback I got from readers that a lot of things about Africa and African ways of life and cultures and traditions, they had no idea about at all. So when I came across FGM, I desperately wanted to share that with as many people as possible and raise awareness, because the facts, the statistics shocked me.
And then you do that in the book Amy Cat for Life. Can you briefly tell us the plot of the story?
Well, Amy's my character that I've taken out of her cozy home in England, and I've set it into a mythical country in Africa, which is like conglomeration, if you like, of Kenya, Botswana, South Africa, Zimbabwe. I've lived in all of those, and I put her through all kinds of problems and so on and so forth. But in this particular book, she runs into 4 young children that have been sent from England to be cut. It's illegal in most countries, and in order to avoid prosecution, it's becoming quite common now for parents to send their children back to their country of origin, original origin, to be cut. And she runs into these 4 girls and she attempts to rescue them.
So how much impact have you seen, or do you see the international community's advocacy and awareness having on this particular issue?
I think it's minimal, to be honest. I mean, this is the first recorded things of FGM were, in fact, in the time of the pharaohs, so it's nothing new, and it's nothing religious either. Since 1970s, major players like World Health Organization, UNICEF, and so on have actually been saying we must stop this practice. But today, over 40 years later, in 25 states in America, it's not a felony.
And Ms. Clark, before we finish, female genital cutting is said to be a way to prepare young women for marriage. So there is a role that men have in this big picture. What do you think men can do to be part of the solution?
I can only suggest that they join the women like they have in the past to advocate for getting the vote, for the right to become doctors, dentists, teachers, for equal pay, basically to recognize women as people. We're the other half of the whole human race. And one of the awful things about FGM with young children in Africa is that they drop out of school. And there's such a wastage of talent that could, in fact, help the whole of Africa to raise the standard of living for everyone. But we need the men on board because they are the guys in charge and they are the lawmakers.
And quickly, again, it's not practiced in every country. It's just some countries and some cultures that practice it. What do you tell those people who say, this is very much part of our culture and we need to respect it? Quickly, what do you tell them?
It's a culture that doesn't help them in the long term. It wastes the ability of the women to improve lives for everyone. It causes so much trauma to women, and it can cause childbirth, it can cause death, it can cause low self-esteem. It's basically a very cruel practice, and there's no there's no real necessity for it.
Lucinda E. Clark, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And that was Lucinda E. Clark. She is the author of the suspenseful literary fiction, Amy Cat for Life. And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Lenore Moudou. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, Lenore, thank you very much. And be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health report every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. How African style could help bring Commonwealth countries together. We'll be right back.
In Libya, more than 100 migrants say they've escaped from a camp where they were being held by smugglers near the oasis town of Tazirbu and managed to reach the city of Kufra. In Kenya, political tensions rise on Tuesday as the government continues its crackdown on opposition figures who were said to have participated in opposition leader Raila Odinga's mock inauguration last week. In Niger, leaders of the 5 Sahel countries met with the defense minister of France to discuss a joint effort to combat jihad in their vulnerable regions, aiming to pool 5,000 men to patrol hot spots by mid-2018. In South Africa, supporters of President Jacob Zuma delivered a memorandum to the African National Congress Monday, demanding the president remain in power until the end of his term next year.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. Food delivery from local restaurants to passengers on bullet trains is China's latest initiative to improve service to customers during the annual Spring Festival travel rush. Passengers can now order and have food delivered from local restaurants without leaving their seats via China's train booking app 12306. Orders have to be submitted an hour before the train pulls into the next station, where the meal will be delivered to train attendants and then delivered to the passengers. Next up, the Commonwealth Fashion Exchange pairs artisan producers from across the Commonwealth as 52 countries with designers of varying fame. Designer Euphemia Ann Sydney Davis of Freetown, Sierra Leone, the former refugee, makes clothes that were inspired by African heritage. She partnered with a big dread Kente, a weaving company in Ghana, that provided her with a one-off hand-woven Kente cloth made with gold-infused yarn. The garments created through the Fashion Exchange will be revealed at a reception at Buckingham Palace during the London Fashion Week later in February. The pieces will then be displayed at London's Australia House before being taken on a wider tour. And finally, enjoying a well-earned scratch behind the ears, this bag is soaking up the limelight at the Karachi Pet Show. A wide variety of breeds, from bulldogs to chihuahuas, are here to strut their stuff and sniff each other out. But it's not just dogs that are attracting attention. One of the highlights of visitors is the chance to stroke a lion cub who is here with its owner. Pet food companies have also set up stalls here, as their merchandise is in high demand. Another big draw is the show's competition, where the audience can vote for their favorite dogs and cats. The show is now in its 6th year, and its popularity among Karachi's animal lovers is showing no sign of fading. And that's our show for today. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at viewafrica.com for more news. Tune in to Viewers Evening Radio Show Africa News tonight at 1800 UTC and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 0600 UTC Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us here in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Woodwork is any part of a house or building that is made of wood.
Crawl out of the woodwork.
This expression sounds troubling.
I won! I have the winning lottery ticket.
Oh, that's great. How much money did you win?
I won $25,000. But please, don't tell anyone.